Hello, everyone. So, out of US, Red Summer 1919. For those of you who are not really aware of what Red Summer was, it's a tree that was memorializing Black Americans who were killed in Elaine, Arkansas, and it's been cut down, this tree. And so, this is by Grace Huck out of USA Today. And so, let's see what goes into this. So, a willow tree that memorialized the African Americans' lives that were lost in 1919 massacre in Elaine, Arkansas, in one of the deadliest racial conflicts in U.S. history, was chopped down this week in what some fear was an act of hate. And so Mary Olson, president and founder of the Elaine Legacy Center, posted about the incident on Facebook on Wednesday. And so the living memorial memorializing all of those who lost their lives in Elaine's massacre of 1919 was chopped down at the base today, and the memorial tag was stolen as well, she said in her post. So Elaine Police Department Chief Alvin Scaife said that the tree appeared to be cut down, but the state authorities were handling the case. So Arkansas Department of Parks and Tourism, which manages the tree, did not respond Saturday morning to a request for comment. So the Department of Justice could not comment whether a hate crime investigation was underway. So more than 200 African American sharecroppers were massacred by white mobs in the September of 1919 in Elaine. Bloodshed spread throughout the country that year during what they call Red Summer. So when hundreds of African American women and children were burned alive, shot, lynched, and beaten to death by white mobs, according to the 2010 census data, Elaine is home to 636 residents. The city is approximately 61% Black, 37% white, and 2% mixed. And so, Living Memorial Tree, funded by Elaine Legacy Center, was planted in April to memorialize the lives lost a century ago. So right now, all we know is that we had a wonderful ceremony, and then there were notified that the tree had been destroyed, said Elaine resident Faye Duncan Daniels, 75 years of age. So Duncan Daniels' ancestors lived in Elaine during that 1919 massacre of Red Summer. She grew up in Elaine and lived there until she was 16 years of age. As a child, Duncan Daniel attended a segregated school that didn't have a library, and she said constantly she lived in fear. And so Red Summer, at that whole term, it marked a period in 1919. Hundreds of Black Americans were killed, a century later, still ignored. And so there's another additional article if you want to read in your leisure. So going on with this one, it says, with more than 50 family members still in Elaine area of Arkansas, Duncan Daniel moved back to her hometown in 2006 to retire. For her, living tree memorial was a symbol of love and brotherhood. And so it marked a symbol of what had happened, as to commemorate the people who, at least that you never forgot that it was a horrible event, and that the people who are descendants of those people could at least have something showing that we remember it and we're sorry. But now with this act, that they're wondering if this was intentional, and they're investigating. They're trying to see if it's being investigated. So on the other hand, it's frightening to think that someone could be this vicious and inconsiderate of other people's humanity. But we have to go back and plant the tree again and communicate our message of brotherhood. And so that's what the tree stood for, Duncan Daniels said. Duncan Daniels said her family never talked about 1919 massacre when she was growing up, but they don't want to teach us hate, she said. They didn't want to teach them that. So Anthony Davis 63 years of age, a researcher of Elaine Legacy Center, has lived in Elaine his whole life, and he said his grandmother and a community leader living in Elaine in 1919, he was put under house arrest by white men from a nearby town in Helena during the massacre. And so while he said that he was deeply hurt by what had happened to the living memorial that commemorated all these people, Davis also sees it as an opportunity to heal as well. So it's a hate crime. And so they don't even want our memories to survive. It's like they're trying to wipe out memories or wipe our memories away, Davis has said. So there's also something called Chicago's Red Summer as well, which was a race riot. Hundreds of Black Americans were injured. And so that's an additional read. So Judge Wendell Griffin of Arkansas Circuit Court judge, pastor, civil rights advocate, said that in an interview of WREG-TV that the act may have been a hate crime for sure. So what I've been hearing is that this is called the act of vandalism. So let's call it what it is, a hate crime. Griffin's told WREG-TV. Hacking down a tree is a hateful act in of itself. So hacking down a tree in a memory of Black people who had been massacred is a racially hateful act. And so this is a racial hate crime. Call it the truth. Okay, so what happened in Elaine? Okay, to go into this story so that you can understand for better of what Red Summer was, while many Americans were not taught about 1919 Elaine's massacre, it was by far the deadliest racial confrontation in Arkansas's history and possibly the bloodiest racial conflict in history in the U.S., according to Central Arkansas Library System's Encyclopedia of Arkansas. Concerns over the treatment of Black defendants in the trials that would follow catalyzed a Supreme Court case that redefined the 14th Amendment and extended due process rights. So 1919, in that year, Black men were returning home from World War I, and many were moving north to escape Jim Crow laws of the South. White Americans across the country saw Blacks as competition for jobs, homes, and political power. So tensions in Elaine erupted in September 30th of that year. So a group of approximately 100 African American sharecroppers working on a plantation of white landowners were attending a meeting of a Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America at a local church, and they wanted to discuss how to obtain better pay for their cotton crops, according to the Encyclopedia of Arkansas. Okay, so it was unknown who fired the first shot, but the shootout began that night between Black armed guards surrounding the church and 3 individuals parked in vehicles outside the church. One of those whom individuals were a white security officer died. And so the next day, an estimated 500 to 1,000 armed white people from Arkansas and Mississippi traveled to Elaine to quell a supposed Black insurrection. They attacked African Americans across Phillips County, and the governor called 500 federal troops to arrest hundreds of African Americans and killed some. So over 4-day period, hundreds of African Americans died. The true number of Black deaths has long been subject to debate. According to the Encyclopedia of Arkansas, 5 white men died. So following the violence, 12 Black men who became known as Elaine 12 were convicted of murder and sentenced to death by an all-white jury. And so while 6 of those convictions were overturned, the other 6 eventually reached the Supreme Court, and no white people were tried at all. So in the 1923 Moore versus Dempsey ruling, the court overturned the 6 convictions. It argued that the trial court had failed to uphold the defendant's due process rights by allowing armed white mobs to dominate the trial. So a trial for murder in the state court in which the accused are hurried to conviction under mob domination without regard for their rights is without due process of law and absolutely void. So Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote in a majority opinion. Okay, so the ruling was watershed, a moment in the history of African American rights. So this was a seismic shift in how the Supreme Court was recognizing the rights of African Americans. Michael Curry, chair of NAACP Advocacy for Policy Committee, told Smithsonian.com. So the case laid groundwork for future legal victories for people of color. Controversy over the new memorial. As a 100-year anniversary Elaine massacre approaches, locals have debated another memorial under construction, so it's going up in the city of Helena, West Helena, approximately 25 miles of Elaine, Arkansas. So while the 1919 violence in Phillips County first broke out in Elaine, Helena, West Helena is where Elaine 12 were trialed by a white judge and an all-white jury. So the memorial is funded by the David P. Solomon, whose family has owned land in Helena since the 19th century, according to the Arkansas Times. So Solomon told Arkansas Times that there has been pushback to the memorial from all sides of the community. So white folks don't want to think of their revered grandfather and great-grandmother did something. But the black folks, for various reasons, some on that basis, the memorial will do nothing for poverty in Phillips County, Solomon said. Duncan Daniel told USA Today that she wishes the memorial had been built in Elaine instead to attract visitors. So it would have been an economic engine. So if you've been to Elaine, Arkansas, you know that you need a compelling reason to go there. So if they had put a memorial there where it actually happened, it would have been a compelling reason, Duncan Daniel said. So to honor this year's anniversary, the Lee Street Community Center will hold a service of remembrance of Elaine on September 28th, on September 29th, and the Elaine Massacre Memorial will be dedicated to Helena, West Helena. And so this really is impactful, and it has something to do with my family history as well, and I'm going to add that in there, that I have family members that were sharecroppers as well, so I'm sure they were affected by this. So I'm going to leave this video, and this is actually the exact place where some of my family members directly were living, and it is very emotional. But anyway, I am going to leave this video. Without further ado, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for listening. Red Summer 1919 tree memorializing Black Americans killed in Elaine, Arkansas, had been cut down. Thank you.